Hi guys, DevilHunterXYZ, and I'm back with another movie review. I know it's been a while since I actually did one of these. I think the last time was almost the beginning of the year at this point. Uh, but yeah, anyway, decided to go out with my friend to see Venom: Let There Be Carnage, the sequel to the Venom movie from 2018, I believe. It's been a while. Yeah, so I mean, still has Tom Hardy. I mean, he has him being Eddie Brock. He's had Venom, but it has a now introduction of Carnage, kind of one of the biggest rivals out there for Venom and Spider-Man for that matter. So let's jump right into it. All right, for the summary, well, the movie opens up with Cletus Cassidy, a notorious serial killer, and he falls in love, with a woman named Frances Barrison, who in the comics, for a note that she is known as Shriek. Granted, the movie doesn't actually refer to her as that, but yeah, she is known as Shriek. Anyway, Frances is getting sent to an institute, and while being transported over there, she ends up attacking a police officer, Patrick Mulligan. Then Officer Mulligan ends up shooting Frances, believing that she was dead, but not knowing to Officer Mulligan, Frances ended up being sent to the institute, being experimented and studied. Uh, Afterwards, it jumps forward to the present day, and Mulligan becomes a detective now. And at that point, he contacts Eddie Brock, saying that Cletus wants to talk to him directly for really unknown reasons. But I kind of think they shared kind of similar backstories per se. Anyway, while over there, Eddie slash Venom, they both discovered a hidden message on Cletus's cell, kind of giving the location on where the missing victims have been. And after discovering that, it boosts Eddie's popularity, his fame, since he was down in a slump. And after that point, Cletus was kind of given a death penalty sentence. And in between that, too, you find out that Eddie's former girlfriend Anne is actually getting married, and it kind of distraughts Eddie and Venom for that matter, to the point where both Eddie and Venom kind of get into a fight, and that that he just wants to be alone. He doesn't want to deal with Venom anymore, and so they eventually separate. All right, so afterwards, as soon as Cletus is about to be put to death, well, an earlier event showed that Cletus and Brock engaged right before his death penalty, and at that point, they get into a little fight, which provoked Venom, which ended up causing Cletus to bite Eddie's hand, which got him a taste of the symbiote within inside him. And after that, at that point, right before his death, though, Cletus's death, a red symbiote starts to emerge from his body, which kind of gave birth to Carnage. And at that point, he ends up escaping out of the prison. And at that point, he ends up tracking down Frances at the institute to break her out. And of course, along those lines, though, the Detective Mulligan is suspecting that Brock has something to do with this, so he brings him in. But Brock refuses to really say anything about that, and he tries to call Anne to see if he can help find Venom once again, so that they can reunite and try to stop Cletus. Which eventually kind of goes to a little scuffle. They eventually do get back together, and at that point, Carnage, Cletus, and Francis kind of go into a little plot to try to get revenge off of the people that did them wrong. Well, in the end, they ended up kidnapping Detective Mulligan, kidnapped Anne, and they kind of sent a message out to Dr. Lewis, Anne's fiance, to try to contact Brock. And at that point, they end up into the final area of the movie, which is kind of a giant cathedral where Cletus and Francis were going to be married. Well, after getting to the cathedral, then it goes into like an all-out brawl with Venom and Carnage, and I guess also along with those lines too, another fight was breaking out between Mulligan, Detective Mulligan, and Francis. And in the end, though, Francis ends up killing Mulligan with her shrieking powers. And as the battle keeps going on between Venom and Carnage, it's clearly obvious that Venom is getting overpowered. Um, and then after seemingly Carnage wins, he eventually goes after Francis for not really like for Carnage not really liking her shrieking abilities as being one of the weaknesses for the symbiotes. And of course, Cletus is fighting against that. And afterwards, though, uh, Carnage slash Cletus decides to take Anne on the top of the cathedral to kill her. And after regaining some strength, Venom chases after them. And as they got to the top of the tower, Francis decides to kill off Carnage by using her shrieking ability one last time, but causing the entire cathedral to collapse, and at the same time also having Francis being crushed by the giant bell on the top of the cathedral. In the end, though, Venom managed to somehow be victorious in that fight, and of course, Cletus gives one last speech saying that all he really wanted was just a friend, but Venom doesn't care. He ends up chopping off his head. And at that point, like, everyone is saved, and afterwards, Venom and Brock kind of bond together and just spend time on a vacation to try to find out what their next move in life is. But afterwards, in the mid credits, as Venom is trying to talk about like alternate universes, something happens where somehow Eddie and Venom get teleported to a completely different room. I don't know if it's in the same universe or in a different universe, but then it shows on TV of J. Jonah Jameson talking about the identity of Spider-Man being Peter Parker, which I guess is kind of a tie-in to the other Spider-Man movie. Well, I guess to the last Spider-Man movie. So I guess in some instance this could be, I, maybe both series kind of are in the same continuity. Who knows? But it's kind of an interesting way to leave off the movie. Well, for the good of this movie, well, one thing I can say is the interesting balance between the action and comedy take. I kind of think it works pretty well. For a movie like this, uh, the dynamic between Eddie and Venom. They kind of had some serious moments. Talking about their past. How they were portrayed in character wise. But at the same time, it does throw a lot of humor bits into it. Where well, mostly Venom throws a lot of humor bits into it, kind of almost like insulting Eddie in a way. Or, well, no, pretty much he is insulting Eddie in some aspects. But I'd say it's a pretty good dynamic between the characters themselves. The second I would probably say is the amount of action into it. It's actually pretty impressive and how much they portray it action wise. I mean, I actually would think it's even more over the top than what Spider-Man 3 actually did. And then the third thing I would say is probably the characters themselves. Yeah, they had some interesting characters, and again, like not like Spider-Man 3 where it just went overboard and trying to jam in every single character in the movie. But they all had equal time on the screen, and you had some really good ones. Besides Carnage, you also had Shriek as well, and I guess technically also Detective Mulligan. Didn't really say it in the summary, but Detective Mulligan, after being killed, there was a scene where his eyes were shown glowing blue, which, according to the comics, Detective Mulligan is actually who was the first host for another symbiote known as Toxin. So it could be a possibility if they were going to do another movie, maybe Toxin might be another character they could add. Who knows? But just saying, at least the main cast all had like equal amount of screen time, and and it did kind of bring out their personalities and whatnots from like the comics. Well, for the I think really for the bad, the only things I could really say about it is the plot wise, it was kind of a bare bones plot, to be honest. It was just having Cletus breaking out of jail as Carnage. Of course, Venom's trying to stop him, but I think mainly it just had a more of a cliche type of story where you have the two pals, Venom and Brock, just separating after differences and then coming back together. I don't know, maybe because I've seen that plot so many times, it just kind of falls flat for me, to be honest. And considering also they were struggling in this similar in the first movie too, it just felt like it was just repeating itself from what the first movie had in a way. Uh, but I mean, I wasn't gonna make that as like my entire argument for not liking it. But I guess the other second movie is just the fact that we don't really get too much closure between Eddie and Anne. It just kind of it just kind of ends in like a cliffhanger type of thing where you know Eddie Eddie sees off Anne and Dr. Lewis, and at that point we don't know. I mean, does he ever contact her again? Or I mean, there were love interests, but it just doesn't even follow up on that. So that's kind of a little bit of a downer, to be honest. All right, so conclusion wise, I would say Venom: Let There Be Carnage is a pretty decent movie. Uh, well, I would say it's probably not one of the best in terms of like Marvel movies. I would actually say it's pretty decent. Pretty good up there. I'd say it's about as good as the original Venom movie from 2018. Like I said, it has some interesting characters, interesting settings. Uh, I wish they would have maybe had a slightly better plot and something a little bit more cliche, honestly. But I mean, overall, it had really good action. I like the dynamic between the characters, and of course, like in the end, it kind of hints that there might be a third Venom movie possibility, with Toxin, and I'm kind of questioning how this movie now might be in canon and in the same continuity as the Spider-Man movies, since again it showed the ending. I'm pretty sure that was like the ending for Spider-Man Far From Home, where like I said, where after the battle against Mysterio with Spider-Man, he ends up. Well, Peter Parker's identity gets revealed by J. Jonah Jameson because Mysterio framed Peter for it. So I don't know. I don't know in some way if there's going to be like a crossover between Venom and Spider-Man in the future or not. I'm not sure if it's going to happen in the next Spider-Man movie, but it seemed like it's a possibility that's what Marvel's going to be doing. But nonetheless, though, with this movie, though, Venom: Let There Be Carnage, I actually think it's worth the watch. And with that, I would probably give it a final score of a 7 out of 10. Some faults here and there, but I actually think it's a pretty decent movie, at least worth one watching. All right, guys, this is DevilHunterXYZ, and until next time.